Hey, this is Dwight Turner. You're watching and listening to Perched on Hollywood.
Hey, welcome everyone to Perched on Hollywood Boulevard. I am your host, Lee Walker, and as you can hear from that opener, today we have actor on TV, short film, and motion picture, Dwight Turner. Dwight, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Lee, and thank you for inviting me onto your show.
Oh, absolutely. One of the very first things I noticed on your IMDb page was actually one of my favorite TV shows, 1,000 Ways to Die.
I thought you were going to say Chicago Fire, but 1,000 Ways. Well, 1,000 Ways to Die really has a cult following, and I did not even realize how much of a cult following that show has until I did the show. And I mean, you'd be surprised how many times I have been out and someone comes up to me because they recognize me from 1,000 Ways to Die. And the weirdest story I ever have from being recognized from 1,000 Ways to Die was I once had a lady say to me, she said, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I recognize your voice. Were you on 1,000 Ways to Die?" And she had just watched that episode. They'd rerun it, and she recognized my voice from it. And I was like, wow. So that was a first.
Awesome. From what I know, you played the character, and it's not even a character really, because it's based on, real life.
A true story.
That happened. And you played Lenny. I did try to find it online, but I had a hard time finding it. Could you tell fans actually what happened to Lenny?
Well, what happened to Lenny was very unfortunate, as is the case with most of, basically almost every episode of 1,000 Ways to Die. So Lenny was not the nicest person in the world, and he was running a Ponzi scheme. And the feds caught on to the Ponzi scheme. Keep in mind, this is a true story. The feds caught on to the Ponzi scheme, and he had got tipped off that they were coming to raid his office. So he and his secretary began shredding all the documents, trying to get rid of evidence. And unfortunately, what happened was, do you remember those metal buckyballs that you would make little sculptures out of?
Yes.
So he loved boba drinks, and he would drink boba drinks all the time. He got mad during this whole thing with finding out the feds were coming, and he had a sculpture on his desk. He grabbed it, threw it onto the desk in anger, and 2 of the buckyballs went into his boba drink. And he drank them along with those little boba balls, did not realize he was drinking the metal balls, magnetic balls. If it had just been 1, he would have been fine. But 2 ended up doing this and did not turn out well for him. Poor Lenny didn't make it.
Well, rest in peace, Lenny. That is wow.
I will give you a little, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to tell this story, but I'll give you a little tidbit, a little something that most people would never know from filming that day. So this was filmed out in California, and they filmed 2 episodes a day of that show. And the episode before my episode, so the episode that was filmed that morning, was about a guy who died and bugs were involved. And they brought in actually live bugs for that episode. Well, they had a hard time getting rid of all of them. So when it came time to film my episode, they were still having an issue. So they came in with they had to bring an exterminator in and try to get rid of all the bugs. And I'm thinking I'm going to be poisoned by all of these chemicals. But you know what? It turned out to be a lot of fun. It was a fun show to work on, and definitely memorable. And to this day, when I go back and I see footage from that, I still laugh myself. Not that it's funny what happened to him, but just
what had happened on set and stuff. Yeah, understandable. And I gotta apologize. I totally jumped the gun. I'm such a big fan of that show. because it is like the stories are so eccentric, but they're true. And you know, even though you realize it, you're like, no one can die like that. And then you watch the show and you're just like, you're mesmerized by just watching it. And
well, I think part of the fascination is that it is as absurd as some of the stories are. They are based on true stories, and I think that's, you know, that has a fascination for people. It's not like this was just written and made up. It's based on a true story.
yeah, and it's incredible too, and the show did really well too. Um, Again, I apologize. I jumped the gun because you know it was one of my favorite shows. Thank God I have a
No,
video.
I love it. Feel free to jump the gun.
um, how did you know? How old were you when you realized that you wanted to become an actor?
Oh my gosh, I was a young kid. One one of my earliest memories is my parents were watching a variety show on television, and I asked my dad, how much do I have to pay to get to do that? And he explained to me, no, they pay you. And I was like, wow, you know, okay. And so that's a very early memory. And then I also did some plays when I was a kid, not on a professional level, just little local community plays. But I think that I knew, you know, way back then that this was something I really enjoyed and something that that I wanted to pursue. Growing up in a very small town and kind of in the middle of nowhere, I didn't know how to do it. But I just wanted to do it somehow. And so I grew up in Hazard, Kentucky, which is in the mountains of southeastern Kentucky. It is a beautiful area, mountains, lakes, but very isolated, especially back then. The closest real city was 2 hours away, a drive through the mountains, and that was Lexington, Kentucky. So it definitely did not prepare me to become an actor or for what my future would be, like living for many years in Los Angeles. But it was a very interesting way to grow up, and I appreciated my childhood growing up there.
Awesome. Now, like, you know, you get middle school, high school. Were you part of like the theater club or anything like that in school, or?
No, gosh, looking back on it, I mean, I don't even know if they had a theater club in high school. It was a very small high school.
Okay, all right.
A small town. There was a community college. I did a show there, and when I was in college, you know, I have a degree in communications with a radio television emphasis. So for a while, I thought maybe I wanted to be a television reporter. And I interned with CBS, and I decided, no, you know, I really want to pursue acting. That's what I did. While I was in college, so my degree was in communications, but I did have some classes that involved theater as electives and enjoyed those. But as soon as I finished college, the very next month, I moved to LA. I couldn't wait. And I moved out there with a friend of mine that I knew from the university who was also graduating. He was part of the theater program. And we moved out to LA, had an agreement that no matter what, we would stay for a year. And he moved back after a month.
Wow.
Yeah. So here I was. I knew no one, knew not really how the industry worked. I was very naive about how to pursue my craft. I just knew that I wanted to do it. And but then some really cool things started to happen. I became friends with a group of actors. One of those actors had a birthday party. I went to his birthday party. A man came up to me at the birthday party and said, "Hey, are you an actor?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'm your friend's agent. Here's my card. Call me up on Wednesday. I'm going to see if I can get you some work." And so I did. I called him up. I went to see him. He sent me out. So that was on Wednesday. He sent me out on my first professional audition ever on Friday, and I booked it. It was for a national commercial, and I was Taft-Hartley'd into SAG. And I just remember thinking at the time, like, wow, this is all so easy. And of course, I realized after a period of time, it's not all that easy. But it was a lucky and a very good way to start.
Yeah, wow. And while we're going with that, you just knocked out a couple of my next questions, so that's even better. You know, we're right on flow here.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting little tidbit. So when my friend moved back to Kentucky, I could not afford at the time. I remember, oh my gosh, I could not afford the rent by myself for the place that I was staying at. And I didn't know anyone, so I was afraid to bring, someone in because, this is LA as compared to, my tiny little town that I grew up in. So what I did was I got a guest room up in this beautiful home in the Hollywood Hills. So this worked out great. I had an amazing view all the way from downtown LA to the ocean. And I lived 2 doors from Bruce Springsteen. Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
the really cool thing about that is from time to time he would have his windows open and he would practice and I could hear him. That was amazing.
Oh, that's cool. That's really, really cool. You might have even heard some newer stuff you might have been working on, just jamming out, and that's pretty cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now you're in, you're out there, you're doing your thing. I gotta ask, you have a nice long list on IMDb. Which is it? Is there a certain particular thing that you prefer? Do you prefer short film, full length?
No, I don't prefer short film. I prefer feature film over television, because what feature film does is it allows you time to play. So when if you're doing a short film, you've got a certain number of days that you're working on that, and so they've got to get that together fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. With a feature film, you're generally working on a scene or even part of a scene during a day and at one location. And so, there can be, many takes, and you can take your time with it. You can play, you tell the director, say, hey, I have an idea. Do you want, can we try this? And usually they'll say yes. And sometimes that can be what ends up in the film. It's not in the script, but you just kind of, something happens there. It's like a little bit of magic, and it can turn out to be fun. And when it is used in the film, that's, fantastic. And a lot of times you don't even know if it's going to be used in the film until you go to the premiere and you're sitting there and the scene comes up and you're like, oh gosh, that's great. That's the thing we just sort of did. We sort of added in.
Yeah. How did you feel with your first gig? I'm just going to go with, when you played Officer Levin's partner in the short film Black Cuts, is it? Yeah,
Black Cut. Oh my God,
Back Cut. Wow,
so far back there. Wow, yeah, that was back when I was first starting out.
And you got to see your name in the credits.
Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. That was a project for USC, University of Southern California, which is one of the most renowned film schools in the world. And I actually have ended up doing a number of movies for them because they're such a good school, and it was such a good training ground. Now that role in particular, because it was one of the very first things that I did, I was nervous. Mm-hmm. You have the butterflies. And I really, at that point, I hadn't gone through training. I didn't really, it was all instinctual, I guess is what I would say, mm-hmm. because I really didn't have the training there. I'd taken some theater classes in college, but I really did not have the training to be on a set working with film and knowing, like what this means when they say that, when they say that. And so I was a quick learner, and gosh, it's so long ago. I'm trying to think. Like, I'm sure, you know what, I was completely thrilled.
Yeah.
And excited, and I think even more so than being there and having that experience was actually getting to see the finished product, and getting to view that, and like you said, seeing my name in the credits at the end. You know,
Yeah.
that was a big thrill because I'd never seen that before.
Awesome. One of the next things I noticed that you worked on, and I want to ask how you're able to portray so many different characters, and how do you get in your head with these roles. Forget Me Not, the Anne Frank story. You're in that movie playing a Nazi soldier. How did that come about? You know, did you read the movie before, or did you read the book? Her book?
I did not. Now I have since read the book, but I did not at the time. And that was filmed actually at Universal Studios, which also the commercial that I did, that first commercial from that very first professional audition, was also filmed at Universal. So it was very exciting. It was a small role, but it was a larger project, and not a student project. So it was exciting. And I just remember thinking, like, wow, because there was a scene that I was in, and there were all of these squibs. And for those of you who do not know what squibs are, a squib is placed into a wall, for instance, and it can even be placed on a person, and it is fired off, and it looks like a bullet is hitting whatever, you know, that squib is placed upon.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember we were in this scene, and these squibs were going off, and I was just like, wow, you know, and it's at night, and it was a fascinating experience. Once again, it was way back at the beginning of my career, and so it was all new and exciting and fresh. And I just literally just soaked in every moment of it. Now, another thing you mentioned there, you said, how do I play the different roles? In other words, some people who are actors tend to go towards a certain thing. They tend to play a certain type of character. I've never wanted to do that. I like what Meryl Streep does. I like her a lot. I like playing these different characters because that's fun for me, to sort of become this person, whoever that person may be. And that's literally what I try to do. I try to become that person. So when I'm playing that role, I am that person, and within the context of the scene. And then when we're finished, I let it go. But when I start out with a character, I look at who this character is, and I look at who I am, and I work towards melding that and bringing it together. And then eventually I reach a point of where it clicks. And that's the point of where I feel comfortable in the shoes of that character, and feel like, you know, when I know I'm doing it, or at least I feel like I'm doing it right when I am on set, and I can feel like I'm making decisions and choices as that character, instead of like, oh, what would Dwight do in this situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And, you know, that actually answered one of my other questions too, because when you're in this role, in this character, I was going to ask, you know, when you're trying to become, you know, this other person on film, and you're trying, do you, when not filming, because like Jim Carrey is notorious for, you know, whoever he is in the film will play that even off film. And
So I understand what you're getting at, and yes, I do. Now, granted, if I am just, let's say if I'm playing a person who is who is emotionally distraught. Let's just go with that. Like if I'm playing a person who is emotionally distraught and it's a sad scene, and I do not want to, between takes, or or if there's a break for lunch or whatever, I do not want to be laughing and like oh gosh, did you hear about this? And no, I like want to stay in that during that period of time. Then when we're done, I just completely let it go. But yes, I like to hold on to whatever the feeling is for that particular scene or that particular role. Now, let me also say, not to the point of being rude or mean or anything like that to someone, but just to try to hold on to that feeling, because I feel like it helps with the process. And I know different actors have different ways of doing things, and some people will do a scene, and then as soon as it ends, they will just be like laughing, and then they go back and do it again. But me personally, I like to hold on to that feeling and not let it go until we're done with it.
Okay. Yeah, because I always remember, I'm a big Andy Kaufman fan, and when Jim Carrey was playing Andy Kaufman in Man on the Moon, everyone knows, if you don't know, Jerry Lawler was the wrestler, and he, Andy Kaufman in real life, they, had a tiff, but it was staged. But then you find on the movie that Lawler and Carrey actually really got into it, and it's because of Jim Carrey stayed in character on and off set, and it things happen, and that's why I asked that question, because I like to know how different actors and actresses, how they portray a role, like in between sets, are you staying in character, or are you unwinding and coming back down to yourself, and then when you have to go back to set, go back up. So I'm always curious how, the different methods that actors and actresses choose to handle the character they're portraying.
Oh yeah, and I've studied with a number of interesting people, and I take from each one, or from each different type of study. I take a tool, I put that in my actor toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
So then, and when I study with people, there may be some things that I don't quite gel with in the training, so I will not necessarily use that. But the parts that do work for me, I will use and pull in these different parts. And I've had the opportunity to study with some fantastic people. Nina Foch was one of the first people that I studied with, and if you look her up, she's done some amazing projects in her time. She's no longer with us. And she had this magnificent home on Rodeo Drive. I'll never forget that. And going to audition for her, and then being in her class. And she only had a small number of students. And I think she got me off to a really good start. Donna Moran is another teacher who I felt like I learned a lot from. And two people from that class with Donna have become pretty famous. One is Katrina Balfe, who's the star of Outlander, and she was also in Ford and Ferrari. She's been in a number of other things, and she's doing really well. And then Clayne Crawford, who was co-starring in Lethal Weapon, the television series. He had a little run-in with Warner Brothers, so he's no longer on that show. I don't even think the show's on anymore. But they've both done really well. And then Margie Haber has been very instrumental in my acting. One of the things I love about Margie is that she was able to pinpoint some little tics that I had as an actor and bring them to my attention so I could get rid of them, which I thought was really helpful. I also studied with Brad Garrett. Remember him from Everybody Loves Raymond?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, he taught me some good comedy skills.
Oh, that's awesome. That's incredible. I'm going to list off like a few characters that you've played. Evil Talks, Chilling Confessions, Detective Doug, Betrayed, Bridgewater Police Chief, Drunk and Disorderly, a short film. You played Officer Bert Smith. when you took these roles, did you ever try and go through any police training, or study police officers on film or in real life or
Yes.
anything like that?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. And, I'll be honest, when I ask friends or when I talk to friends who've known me for many years, and I'm like, did you ever think I'd be playing like all of these like detectives? And they're like, no. But I love it. And it's really fun to play those roles. Now I did, what was the first one? I think it was Betrayed, actually, which was filmed out in California, studio in downtown LA. And what happens sometimes, you get a bit stereotyped, and you play one role and people like it, and then you end up playing another one, and then another. Before you know it, you've got a string of playing, lead detectives,
Yeah.
or police-oriented roles. And and I also get the doctor roles, and generally they're like intelligent or powerful roles in one way or another, and I like them. As far as the training goes, so here's an example. When I did Murder Comes to Town, which was filmed in Tennessee, I worked with two actual Knoxville police officers, and they trained me on various aspects of what they do, how to put on the handcuffs, how to take them off, how to frisk, how to during a stop, how to use the cart as a shield or the car door as a shield. All these various things that, until you receive that training, you really don't know. But it's really good, because then when you portray that on camera, you're doing it in a realistic way. Because believe me, there are people out there who will write and they will say, like, yeah, I saw this, and that isn't quite the way it is, and so it's always good if you can get it right.
Yeah, and you were also in Fatal Attraction too, as you played a sergeant as well.
Yeah.
But a few things I noticed was you did have a few roles as a police officer and everything, and I'm always curious. Did you do that? Did you go with those officers on your own time? Did you do it on studio time? Or?
No, yes, it was studio time. So they brought the officers in as consultants on the show, and so they were there to actually train me and to make sure that everything looked the way it should, and then they themselves appear in the background. So when you watch the episode, you can see them in the background, real police officers.
Oh, that is awesome. And you bring up playing a doctor, and I'm sure this is something everybody likes to talk to you about. You were on Chicago Fire, the TV show.
Yes.
You played a doctor, and same question. Did any doctors come in to help, or did you try and watch as much as you could to learn about the role at all, or?
Well, first of all, playing Dr. Mayberry, that's one of my favorite things that I've done, because one, it's Chicago Fire is a very recognizable show, and so many people. We were speaking earlier about 1,000 Ways to Die, and people recognizing me from that. Well, Chicago Fire, people recognize me a lot from that, because it has a huge audience, and that whole process of working with that show was absolutely a wonderful experience. Claire Simon's office, which is the casting office up in Chicago, fantastic to work with. I got a call from my agent, and Claire Simon wanted to see me for a guest star role, and I was not able to go to that audition in person. It was up in Chicago, and I sent a self-tape, which is never as good as being in the room with the casting director.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't get that. I watched the episode. The guy who did get it was Bullseye, so they picked the perfect guy for that episode. although I wish it had been me. But then my agent called and said, this was 2 weeks later, and said, Dwight, Claire wants to see you again. I don't care what is on your calendar. I don't care what you are doing. You are going to Chicago no matter what, because she does not call again unless she wants to see someone, and she definitely doesn't call 2 weeks later. So I did. I went up to Chicago, and I booked Dr. Mayberry. And I didn't receive any doctor training for that, but it was a great experience working with Yuri Sardarov, who played Otis. Was fantastic. He's a super nice guy. I was so sad when they killed off Otis from the show. One interesting little side note I'll tell you is, so when I was up there, our holding area for that day at the studio is the bar that they have set up for the bar scenes. And normally when you walk into a set, you've got like 3 walls, and then, just the 4th wall is just open, and maybe there's no real ceiling. It's just, really high studio ceiling up above, and they have lights and everything. This, down to every detail, is just like the real bar. So when you walk in, then you're sitting in there, it's just like you were sitting in the actual bar in Chicago. Pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. We see, through your resume on IMDb, you've played all sorts of various characters, from doctors, various police officers, a best man in a wedding with the movie Liz and Dick, which starred Lindsay Lohan, I believe, correct?
Oh, I want to hear a little tidbit about that.
I would love to, because I have heard stories from Steve-O from Jackass about Lindsay Lohan. So yes, I would love to.
Well, I'll just tell this.
Okay.
So I did not know who I was going to be working with until I was there that day.
Oh, wow.
Because there was so much press that was going on around Lindsay at the time.
Yeah.
It was all very secretive. They gave a fake name for the project. And so it was not until I arrived and signed the contract that I realized who I was going to be working with. And they kept it secret because she was getting a lot of press at the time, and basically people were hounding her. So I have to admit, they did a really good job at keeping it secret. I had no idea until I was there.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Another aspect I was going to bring up, from playing soldiers, officers, best mans, and stuff like that. What was it like playing a ghost? You were in the TV show The Ghost Whisperer, and you were
Ghost Whisperer. Oh my gosh, that was way back there as well. And that was just a very, very small thing. It was fun. I will say this: we filmed out in, oh gosh, what's the area called? It's up near Pasadena, California, and in this magnificent old house, which when you looked at the house, it looked like it was haunted. And it's a historic home, and they had a book there, and the owners were there while we were filming, and the husband showed me the book that showed that house way back when it was first built, and there was nothing around except orange groves in every direction. And now, of course, there's a whole city around it. But it was really cool to see that. That was a fun experience. Once again, back years ago, and even though that was a small thing for me, it was a lot of fun just because so many things were new at that point. And that was back when I was first beginning to work on actual television shows as compared to doing student film. So I started making that jump.
Awesome. Is there any advice you would give to anyone wanting to break into the acting business? because I myself, I've done acting. I know the stress and the hard times and the good times that come along with it. What would you tell the audience who's listening that might want to become an actor or an actress, like a couple of things that they should, do, look out for? And
Well, I would, first and foremost, I would say do it because you love it. And if you love it, then it makes it all worthwhile, because it's a very nonlinear industry, and it can be a bit of a roller coaster ride at times. Um, a lot of people, especially in, I'd say, the last 15 years, come into the industry just, hoping, like they're putting their quarter in the slot machine and hoping something comes up for them. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes that can happen. But what I find is most people, and this is from years of being in LA and in this industry, most people come into it for about a year and then they leave. Some will get lucky and hit something that's fantastic. But those generally that stay in it for 3 years are in it for the long run. That's been my experience anyway. And I would say, just realize that, it is a nonlinear industry. So 2 + 2 does not necessarily equal 4. In other words, if you are training to become a doctor, for instance, that you can study here and you will end up in this situation.
mm-hmm.
It's not like that with acting. You have some very talented people. I've known some very talented people who never do anything. Like nothing ever really happens for them, even though they're really talented. You have some people who just right place at the right time, right project, they hit, boom. It may be a one-time thing for them, or it may lead on to a really fantastic career for them. But just do it because you enjoy it. That would probably be one of my biggest things to say. And I believe that talent, there's a certain amount of natural talent that cannot be taught, but that talent that you have can always be improved. So if you train with some good people, so if you can get some good training, and I guess the last piece of advice would be, if you can find a mentor who can help you sort of navigate and make good decisions in your career process, that's very helpful as well.
All right, awesome. And I was going to say that, when it comes to all of that, it's a career that you can always learn every day. You always learn something new, and whether it's from another actor, actress, a director, there's always things to, always something new to learn, which is, incredible. And if you're someone who loves to learn, it's a good profession.
Absolutely. There is always something new to learn. And I love that. And in this year, I've had, talk about learning something new. I had what a crazy year, by the way, with the pandemic. Yeah. But I had 2 very interesting things happen that had never happened before. One was, I've done lifestyle modeling, which is like print modeling for products and companies, but I've never been a runway model for a high fashion runway show. Well, I was booked on a show as a runway model, and that was going to happen on March 21st, and it was canceled because of the pandemic. It was my first project that was canceled because of the pandemic, and I'm thinking, wow, here I have this very interesting opportunity for something I've never done before, and it's canceled because of the pandemic. And the other was, or is, a musical. So I can sing, but I have never done a musical. I barely read music, and I am not trained in that way. Well, I was asked to audition for a musical, and I turned down the audition. I didn't go. And then I was asked why I didn't go and asked to audition again. And so I thought, okay, well, if I'm being asked twice, I need to do this. And so I auditioned and I booked the lead male romantic role in this musical. So, you know, when you do when you're starting out in musicals, generally, you know, you're like in the chorus and you kind of like learning how things work and stuff. So I am being thrown into, and I'm loving it. I mean, I'm thrown into this lead role in a musical where the composer is from New York, has a show running off Broadway, not at the moment because of COVID, there are no audiences, and the writer director is award winning. So there's something behind the show, and so it's a bit of pressure, and it does make me nervous. But my goal is just to be completely professional and knock their socks off.
That is incredible, and congratulations with the lead role on that. Have they kept up with you about when things will take place because of COVID and like that?
It's funny. Let's see. I've been working on it today. So this is the script. So you can see like there's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty robust. So what's been happening is we've been doing Zoom rehearsals because we could not rehearse in person.
Okay.
So that makes it even more complicated for me because this is all new to me. And then at the same time, we're having to do this online. We did have our first in-person rehearsal recently, and we're going to have another one coming up very soon. And I think that will be, I look forward to that. I think that will be very helpful. We're going to do a cast album, and we're going to do a live radio version of the show. And then hopefully some point we're going to be able to bring audiences back in and put that show up on stage. And who knows, maybe eventually New York. That's the goal anyway. So stay tuned, as I like to say.
Yeah. Wow. That I can't wait to see that. I'm quite a big fan of musicals myself. So I can't wait for, to see that, and I will be looking for your name.
Awesome. Thanks.
You're welcome. And we talk about the pandemic as actors, actresses. It's affected everybody. But there's a lot of things I don't think people tend to realize when it comes to acting. It's affected you with, you just brought up like some of the works that you had in progress.
It has. I mean, look, I've got a list here of projects that have either been canceled or postponed because of the pandemic. So, there is a series that I did last year that has now been put off. I believe it's going to come out in the fall. And so stay tuned for that. There's the musical, which I mentioned, which, at this point would have hopefully already been on stage, but because of the pandemic is not. I have a series coming up that, because of the non-disclosure agreement, I can't go into the details, but it stars a very well-known star of some other series, one a fantasy series, another a sci-fi series.
Okay.
And while I can't name the show, what I can say is if you go to my IMDb, so it's imdb.me/Dwight Turner. And I am listed as rumored for that show. So that's all I can really say about it. But if you want to do a little research, maybe you can figure it out. There is a film that is supposed to be filming out in the California desert, all on hold. Who knows what's going to happen with that because of the pandemic. And then that runway show that I was telling you about. So, my year was starting off pretty good, and all of these projects were happening, and then one by one. Well, the runway show was the first one to go down. That was the one that was, like I said, March 21st. And then it wasn't long after that. I mean, within literally, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks, everything was just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, our whole industry, and it's not just the entertainment industry; it's all of these industries around the world have been affected by this. And
Yeah.
for someone like me, I love what I do. I love my job. So to not be able to do it for a period of time has been frustrating. I've actually canceled vacations because I booked a project and I thought, okay, it would be more fun to do that project than it would be to go on vacation. So
Yeah.
that's how much I enjoy what I do.
That's incredible, because anyone I know, no matter what their profession is, they'll go on the vacation. um, so, I mean, aside from with the musical doing like Zoom sessions and aside from, this interview, how have you filled your time up during this whole pandemic?
Well, so, you mentioned interviews, so I have been doing a number of interviews during this downtime, and it's been an interesting experience because part of me thinks like, oh, I like to hold on to the mystique of being an actor and the roles that I'm playing, but then there's a part of me that thinks, well, the interviews are fun, they're hopefully interesting, and who knows, people out there, like I might be able to encourage someone else who is wanting to be involved in acting, or who might learn something from it. Another thing that I've been doing is I've been doing some online training, and also I have been in callbacks for a film where I am playing a German, and so I've been learning the German dialect, and have added that to my list of dialects. Oh, by the way, we were talking about Hazard, Kentucky earlier.
Mhm.
So speaking of dialects, when I grew up, so I grew up talking like this. This was basically how I talked until I was about 12 years old. And then I started realizing that I wanted to be an actor, and so I started working on getting rid of it. And I got to use that accent that I grew up with the very first time ever in my entire career last year.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's awesome. How did how did you feel bringing your old voice back that that you had as a kid?
I have to say it was interesting because I am so used to not acting with it that I had to actually think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even though it was the accent that I grew up with, when you go away from it for so many years,
Hmm.
it's just, yeah, I had to think about it before each scene and how I was going to play that scene. And I even had some experiences where we would finish the scene and I'd be like, oh, yeah, can we film that one again, because I didn't quite hit that just right.
Hmm.
And of course, growing up in southeastern Kentucky, I knew how to hit it just right.
Well, that's awesome. Um, where can fans find you on social media? I know you have your
Oh my gosh.
page.
Well, let's see. Let me get my handy dandy list here for you. So first and foremost, you can go to dwightturner.com. And that's my website. It'll talk about things that are coming up, or things that I've done. You can view video clips there, audio, images from various projects that I've worked on. And then IMDb is a very important site as well, because that lists, that's the professional listing of all the projects that I've done. And that's imdb.me/Dwight Turner. You can find me on Facebook at Actor Dwight Turner. And also on Facebook as Dwight Turner. That's my personal page. But I've hit the 5,000 limit. So I can't, unless I get rid of people, I can't take anyone else. And I'm on Twitter as Actor Dwight, and Instagram as Actor Dwight Turner, and LinkedIn as Actor Dwight Turner.
there's a lot of platforms there, and I got to ask this. This is going to be the last question. How important is it for you as an actor to be on social media and to utilize social media for, you know, your platforms to get stuff out?
It has been important for me. I've actually booked some, one project in particular, I did a Chevrolet commercial, and I booked that commercial because of my connection with the casting director on Facebook. So that was very, very important connection. And if it had not been for that Facebook connection, I probably would not have ever done that Chevrolet commercial. Now, I made a decision years ago to completely open up my social media. So even, let's say, even if you are not a friend on Facebook, for instance, you can go in and view all of my stuff, because everything that I put on social media, I don't mind if the whole world sees. I don't put anything on there that I don't want everyone to know about. So so that keeps it pretty simple and easy. But I definitely find social media has worked for me.
Awesome. Dwight, I'd like to thank you for coming on today. It's been an incredible experience. Anytime I do an interview and I feel like I'm talking to a friend, to me that says it was a great interview. So I want to thank you. That it was awesome to have you on. I hope I can have you on again. And I'd also like to thank mutual friend Steve Joyner. If it wasn't for Steve, this interview wouldn't have happened. So Steve, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
I appreciate that. And Dwight, I look forward to speaking with you again. I had a lot of fun, and thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you, Lee.
And fans, this wraps up another episode of Perched on Hollywood Boulevard. Go back and check our other episodes on Podbean and on YouTube. Fans, the curtain is coming down. Have a good night, everybody.